Hey, my name is Jake. I'm 25 years old, and I'm from Brazil. 5 months ago, I couldn't speak English. Not a little English, not broken English, but the kind where even a simple sentence like, "How are you?" made my mind freeze. I knew words, I had studied before, but when it was time to speak, nothing came out. For a long time, I told myself that was fine. I'm a software engineer, I love coding, and I'm good at it. I spent years improving my technical skills, convincing myself that English could wait, that my work would speak for me. I was wrong. After years of hard work, one night I received an email that felt like a dream. "Congratulations, Jake. You have been selected for an interview." It was a big tech company in the US, the kind of company that changes your life. I remember smiling at my screen, imagining a new country, a better future, a version of myself who had finally made it. Then interview day came. I opened Zoom and saw 3 interviewers on the screen, all native English speakers. The moment they started talking, it felt like someone had pressed fast forward on their voices. The words blended together, my heart started racing, and my mind went completely blank. Then came the first question. "Jake, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your experience?" I knew the answer. I had practiced it in my head so many times. But when I opened my mouth, all I could say was, yes. I am software. I do coding, many projects. I am very good." The silence that followed was painful. Not the silence of thinking, but the silence that makes your stomach drop. They asked another question, then another, and I failed every single one. In the end, one of them smiled politely and said, "All right, Jake. Thank you for your time." I closed my laptop and just sat there, staring at the wall. I didn't fail because I wasn't smart. I didn't fail because I wasn't qualified. I failed because I couldn't speak English. In that moment, I finally understood something I had ignored for years. English is not a subject. It's not just something you study in school. It's access. Access to opportunities, access to confidence, access to the life you know you're capable of living. And that day, I didn't just lose a job. That day, I didn't lose a job. I lost my excuse. Before that interview, I didn't think I was bad at English. In fact, I thought I was doing everything right. I had studied English for years at school. I knew grammar rules, I could read simple texts, and I had memorized hundreds of words. But the truth is, none of that helped me when I actually needed to speak. And that's when I realized something important. Most people don't fail at English because they're lazy or not intelligent. They fail because they learn it the wrong way. I had tried the serious way before. About a year earlier, I paid for an online English course. It wasn't cheap, but I believed it would finally fix my problem. Every week, the teacher gave us long vocabulary lists to memorize, grammar exercises to complete, and rules to study. I did everything they asked. I memorized words like nevertheless, although, and furthermore. I learned tenses, conditionals, and passive voice. On paper, I was improving. But when I tried to have a real conversation, my mind went blank again. I couldn't order coffee naturally. I couldn't explain my ideas. I couldn't speak without translating every sentence in my head. That's when frustration started to grow. I had spent money. I had spent time. Yet nothing changed in real life. And when I looked around, I realized I wasn't alone. Most English learners make the same mistakes. The first mistake is learning words one by one, without context. People believe that if they learn more vocabulary, fluency will magically appear. But knowing a word is not the same as being able to use it. I already knew many words, yet I couldn't form sentences under pressure. The second mistake is focusing too much on grammar. Grammar is important, but grammar without speaking is useless. You can know every rule and still freeze in a conversation. The third mistake is spending money on courses that look impressive, but don't train you for real life. They make you feel like you're studying, but not like you're communicating. Here is the hard truth I had to accept. The problem was not that I didn't study enough. The problem was that I was studying English like a school subject, not like a living language. I was trying to sound correct instead of trying to communicate. I was trying to be perfect instead of trying to be understood. English was something I learned from books, not something I used in my daily life. That interview forced me to face reality. In real life, no one cares how many grammar rules you know. They care if you can respond, explain, and connect. English is not about intelligence. It's about usage. It's about training your brain to react, not to analyze. And until that moment, I had never trained English the way I trained coding, by doing it every day in real situations. That's when everything shifted for me. I stopped chasing complicated words and perfect sentences. I stopped trying to sound smart. I stopped learning English for exams and certificates. Instead, I asked myself one simple question. What do I actually need English for in real life? And once I answered that, my entire approach changed. So I stopped trying to sound smart and started trying to survive in English. After that interview, I knew one thing for sure. If I wanted my English to change, I couldn't keep learning the way I used to. I didn't need more rules, more books, or more complicated words. I needed to speak. But I also knew I couldn't jump into long conversations immediately. I needed a foundation, something simple but real. That's when I created one rule that changed everything for me. Use before you learn. Instead of asking, what should I study today? I started asking, what do I actually need to say today? For the first 15 days, I didn't learn a single new word on purpose. That sounds crazy, I know. But I realized something important. I already knew many words. My problem wasn't lack of vocabulary. My problem was that my brain panicked every time I tried to use English. So my goal during these 15 days was simple. Stop the panic and build automatic speaking. The first thing I did was create what I call survival sentences. I sat down and thought about my daily life. What do I really say every day? Not in textbooks, but in real life. I wrote a list of about 50 very simple sentences. Things like, "Hi, how are you? Can you repeat that? I don't understand. I'm learning English. I need a coffee, please. Sorry, I'm a bit slow." These were not fancy sentences. They were useful sentences. Every morning and every night, I read them out loud. Not once, not twice, but 10 times. At first, my tongue felt heavy, my pronunciation was awkward, and I felt uncomfortable. But after 5 days, something strange happened. These sentences started coming out automatically, without thinking. They felt familiar, like muscle memory. The second thing I did was self-talk, and this became my secret weapon. I decided that whenever I was alone, I would speak English to myself. No pressure, no perfection, no audience. When I was in the shower, I said, "I am taking a shower. The water is warm. I feel relaxed." When I was making breakfast, I said, "I am cooking eggs. I like eggs. They are easy to cook." When I was walking outside, I described what I saw. "The weather is hot. I see people walking. That man is wearing a blue shirt." At first, I felt stupid. I won't lie. But then I realized this was my safest practice space. No one could judge me. No one could interrupt me. And slowly, my brain stopped translating from Portuguese. English started to appear directly. The third strategy was copying real sentences from real English. Every day, I chose 5 short sentences from movies, YouTube videos, or podcasts. Not from grammar books. From real people. I didn't just read them. I listened carefully, paused the audio, and repeated each sentence out loud 10 times, copying the speed, the tone, and the emotion. If the speaker sounded surprised, I sounded surprised. If they sounded calm, I stayed calm. This helped me in 2 ways. First, my pronunciation improved naturally. Second, I stopped sounding like a robot. I started sounding human. After about 1 week, something incredible happened. I noticed that when someone asked me a simple question, I didn't freeze anymore. My answers were short, but they came out naturally. After 2 weeks, I could say basic sentences without translating in my head. I wasn't fluent. I wasn't perfect. But I was speaking. And more importantly, I wasn't afraid anymore. That's when I understood a powerful truth. Fluency doesn't start when you know more words. It starts when your brain stops panicking. Once the fear is gone, progress becomes much faster. Those first 15 days didn't make me fluent, but they changed my relationship with English forever. English was no longer something I studied. It became something I used. And that foundation prepared me for the real transformation that came next. Fluency starts when your brain stops panicking. After the first 15 days, I felt something I had never felt before with English: calm. I wasn't fluent yet, but my brain no longer panicked when English appeared. That's when I knew it was time to go deeper. This was the stage where most people quit, because progress feels slower and the excitement of starting something new is gone. But this was also the stage where real transformation happens. I needed a system I could follow every day, even when I felt tired, busy, or unmotivated. The first technique that changed everything was what I call the question-answer method. I realized that my biggest problem wasn't vocabulary or grammar. It was speed. My brain was too slow. I knew words, but I couldn't connect them fast enough in real conversations. So every day, I asked myself simple questions in English and forced myself to answer immediately, without thinking too much. Questions like, what did you do today? What are you working on right now? What did you eat for breakfast? At first, my answers were short and basic. I worked. I ate eggs. But I didn't stop there. I answered the same question again, adding more details each time. I worked on my project. I worked on my project for 3 hours. I worked on my project for 3 hours. Then I took a break and drank some coffee. This trained my brain to build sentences naturally, step by step, without freezing. After a few weeks, my speaking speed increased dramatically, and my sentences became longer and more natural. The second powerful tool was echo and shadowing. Pronunciation had always been a big insecurity for me. Even when people understood me, I could hear my accent, and it made me feel small. So instead of studying pronunciation rules, I copied real voices. Every day, I listened to short clips from movies, podcasts, or YouTube videos. I paused after each sentence and repeated it exactly the same way, matching the speed, rhythm, and emotion. Sometimes I even walked around my room, repeating the same sentence 10 times. Later, I started shadowing, which means repeating the sentence immediately while the speaker was still talking. This felt difficult at first, but it forced my mouth and ears to work together. After 1 month, something surprising happened. Native speakers started saying, "Your English sounds natural. Not perfect, but natural." That was a huge confidence boost. Vocabulary was still important, but I refused to memorize long word lists again. Instead, I used story-based vocabulary. Every day, I chose 5 new words. Only 5. Then I created a short, simple story using all of them. I read that story out loud several times and tried to use those words in my daily speaking. For example, if my words were excited, invitation, arrive, party, and surprise, I created a small story about receiving an invitation and arriving at a party. Because the words were connected to a story, they stayed in my memory naturally. After a few months, I had learned hundreds of new words without stress or memorization. Another key part of my system was training my brain to think in English. This was uncomfortable at first, but extremely powerful. I started describing my life in English, silently or out loud. When I walked outside, I said, "The sky is blue. It's very hot today. People are walking fast." When I was working, I described what I was doing. I also asked myself questions in English and answered them. What am I doing right now? Why am I tired today? Slowly, English stopped feeling foreign. It became part of my inner voice. To make all of this work, I had to change my lifestyle. I started journaling in English every night. At first, my sentences were simple and repetitive, but I didn't care. The goal wasn't beauty. The goal was usage. I also made a rule: at least 2 hours of English every day, no excuses. Some days I spoke with people. Other days I talked to myself, listened to podcasts, watched videos, or wrote. English was everywhere. My phone language changed to English. My social media feed became English. My music, my videos, my habits followed the same direction. I didn't wait to feel confident. I spoke even when I felt awkward. Especially when I felt awkward. That's when I learned one of the most important lessons of my entire journey. Confidence does not come before speaking. Confidence comes from speaking. You don't need confidence to open your mouth. You get confidence after you open it 100 times. Every small conversation, every mistake, every awkward sentence was building something inside me. And without realizing it, English stopped being a barrier. It became a tool. By the end of month 4, I was no longer learning English. I was living in it. And that's when the real breakthrough began. You don't need confidence to speak. You get confidence by speaking. One day, something felt different. I was standing in front of the mirror, speaking English to myself like I had done so many times before. But this time there was no hesitation. I wasn't translating in my head. The words came out naturally, calmly, almost effortlessly. It didn't feel like magic. It felt earned. Months of speaking, listening, repeating, and failing quietly had finally connected. That was the moment I knew my English had changed. To test myself, I joined an online conversation with native English speakers. My heart was beating fast, but I reminded myself how far I had come. When I started speaking, I didn't freeze. I understood what others were saying. I responded clearly. People listened, nodded, and asked me questions. For the first time, I wasn't the silent one in the room. I belonged. That night, I closed my laptop with a smile I couldn't hide. A few weeks later, I applied for the same job again. This time, I wasn't the nervous guy hoping to survive the interview. I was ready. When the interviewer asked questions, I answered without fear. I didn't chase perfect sentences. I focused on being clear and real. I could see the difference in their eyes. A few days later, I got the call. I got the job. The same company that had rejected me before now wanted me. That moment changed everything. The first people I told were my parents. I could hear the pride in their voices. With my first salary, I bought my father a watch he had always wanted, and my mother a necklace she never bought for herself. When I handed them those gifts, I understood something deeply. This journey wasn't only about English. It was about giving back, about becoming the person I promised myself I would be. So let me leave you with 5 lessons from my journey. First, mindset matters more than talent. If you believe English is impossible, it will be. Second, consistency beats perfection. Small daily effort will always win. Third, learn English for real life, not for tests. Fourth, speak without fear. Mistakes are not failure, silence is. And finally, English is freedom. Freedom to express yourself, to access opportunities, and to build the life you imagine. If this story touched you, like this video as a quiet yes to your own journey. Subscribe to Inspire English Stories if you want to keep learning English through real stories like this. And comment, I'm starting today, to make a promise to yourself. Because this is not just my English story. It can be yours.